How are you all doing today? So I'm Martin from Gardens for Life in Birdland Homestead. So we'll just wait for people to come in, and we'll answer any questions that you might have. So please do let me know if the sound is okay. Can you hear me pretty good? We can switch to a different microphone if we have to. So today we're 15 minutes later than usual. That is because I was actually at the other garden potting up plants. So we did get a couple of questions in via email throughout the week. So we might go through those if we get stuck for questions. We'll just give people a chance to join. And I did actually send out an email to people. So hopefully we'll get a few of you joining today. So any questions you have, please put those into the comments and we'll try to address them. You're best off if the question is directed towards me, just put questions in all capital letters at the beginning of your question, just so I can spot those easier. I can see a few of you coming in now. So last week we were talking about what kind of plants we're actually going to be growing this year. And the answer is pretty much the same as every year. We're just kind of growing plants that are actually both perennial and hardy at the same time. So we've definitely put plants to the test because at our gardens, we have planted plants in pots and planted them outside as well. And we've even had them survive droughts in the summer and extreme cold spells in the winter. So those are the kind of plants you want to be growing. Could you guys just let me know how the microphone is? If it's not so good, I can switch to a different microphone. I've got another here. Please let me know in the comments if you would. So we are mainly going to be growing perennial flowers and vegetables as well, and some berry bushes and trees also. So we are just seeding up trays now. So we got a pallet of compost delivered yesterday, and we went halves with a friend that lives local to us. And so we started filling up trays and filling up the tables in the greenhouse to seed those up. So that was done last night. It was quite a late night actually last night. And today I did some soil blocks actually. For those of you who are not familiar with soil blocks, you can actually check out the video that I made on soil blocking some time ago. And I compare using trays and soil blocks. So both have advantages and disadvantages, but I like to use both because the soil blocks do take longer to make, but at the same time, they are a better quality seedling once you get them going. They are, I think they do dry out actually a bit easier as well. And I'd say the fact that the roots are actually air pruned when you're using soil blocks is totally worth the difference and worth the effort of putting into making the blocks in the first place. So yeah, we're going to be seeding those up later on after this live session probably. And another case of dark gardening out in the dark, of course. That's what happens, but sure, the days are getting longer now, so it's brilliant. We're looking forward to a summer and actually wearing t-shirts outside again. Although I was able to wear a t-shirt out in the greenhouse and most of the day up until about 8 p.m. I think. So if you guys have any questions for me related to homesteading, for example, or anything to do with gardening, of course, you can just ask me in the comments below, whatever platform you're watching this on. This is actually being streamed to 4 different places at the moment, including our Birdland Homestead YouTube channel as well. So I haven't figured out how to set up the Odyssey stream yet, and we're going to be streaming to Rumble as well in the near future. So hopefully we can catch you guys over there as well if you have if you use those websites. Could you guys just let me know if the microphone is good quality? If you're not happy with it, that's fine. I can switch to another microphone. I'm just checking, is it loud enough? Is it good quality? So we have a couple of questions there. What do you recommend to feed strawberries in pots? So we actually grew an awful lot of strawberries before at the house we were renting. This was like maybe about 9 or 10 years ago now. That's when I last grew strawberries in pots. At least were 2-liter pots, and they were just filled with old mushroom compost. So we used some volcanic rock dust and some seaweed dust as well. And you can mix that in the wheelbarrow, and then you can fill up your pots and plant your strawberries in it. We did 1 plant per pot if it's a 2-liter pot. Just bear in mind that those will dry out quite easily. But if you put those somewhere in a sunny spot, they'll do very well for you and produce about 1/2 kilo of strawberries per plant. So we did about 100 plants at the time, and that was 50 kilos of strawberries. So we were eating strawberries, and we were giving them away, and we were making jam as well. So that was awesome. We were able to take the jam and actually just anyone coming to visit, even people buying stuff off us on Dundee or whatever, were actually getting a jar of jam, because we had so many. Thank you, Pauline, for letting me know about the microphone. I appreciate that. So you can add, if those strawberries, the best thing you can add into any plant, especially if it's in a container. So just bear in mind that a container is an artificial environment. You have to provide the plant with what it needs, because you're putting it into this small space, and the roots are only able to absorb, so they only have so much capacity to absorb the nutrients. So I would use compost if you can. If you have, for example, 6 months or 1-year-old mushroom compost would be ideal. Again, just if you don't have any volcanic rock dust or seaweed dust, and you can get those, I think Fruit Hill Farm in Cork, they have that. And it's always good to add as much as you can while you're potting them up, because that's when you really have all the fertility you need for the plant for the whole season. You don't need to water them with liquid fertilizers, but you can if you want to. I wouldn't bother personally. You could also sprinkle a bit of, if you have them already potted up, you could also just spread some of those like seaweed dust or volcanic rock dust on the surface of your pot, and just water it in. And every time you water it, some of that nutrient will go down into the soil, and the plant will be able to absorb it, hopefully with the help of the soil life, for what little there is of it in the pot, of course. But in general, I would try to grow strawberries nowadays, 10 years later, more or less. I would grow strawberries in crates where they have way more rooting space, more soil to root into, and I would use pure compost. And again, you don't have to have seaweed dust or rock dust, but it would help. And so we put 6 plants per crate, you know, those supermarket crates, the plastic ones. And we made some tables that are made of pallets. So if you look up pallet tables on our YouTube or on our website, you'll find how to, well, at least you'll see how we made it, and how we're using the crates to grow strawberries. So strawberries do best if you keep them in full sun and you water them quite often, but at the same time keep those off the ground and away from the slugs and birds. So, and you want to keep them nearby where you go, like zone 1 in permaculture, where you simply are walking every day. So strawberries are a bit of work. I find raspberries a lot easier, although they are the most weedy plant in the garden, even though nettles and creeping buttercup are a close second. So let me see if there's any other questions. If you have any questions at all, anyone watching this, please let me know in the comments. You can just type in question in all caps first, and ask me anything about homesteading, Nordic gardening, how to grow food, how to preserve food, a little bit about, I know a little bit about backup power and lights and that kind of thing. We do teach that in our homestead introduction course. And home brewing, if you have any questions about that, I can answer those too. Let me just see here. I'm always looking over this way to check the comments on all platforms. They do come in here. So let me just check and see. So Harold is saying, just planted my ginger and Jerusalem artichokes. Excited for this season. This year grown for seed and my own tubers. Any recommendations? So what are you trying to grow seeds out of? Are you trying to get this ginger to grow seeds? I would doubt it. Probably the Jerusalem artichokes. Those are actually a tuberous sunflower, and you need a very, very long season to mature enough to produce seeds. So I know Klaus Leitenberger in Sligo or in Bundoran. He actually took some of his tubers and sent them to his friend in Greece, and he grew them there for a full season, and they have way more sun, of course, and I assume the season is much longer, and they actually went to seed successfully. So I wonder where you're based. What kind of zone are you based in, or are you in the US? What USDA zone are you in? Because maybe I could give you an idea of whether it is possible to get those to seed. I know they do come from the Midwest. I think it is probably further south in the US. Jerusalem artichokes do not come from Jerusalem, of course. They're just known as girasol. So gyro is gyro, like as in spinning around, and sol is the sun. So it's basically spinning with the sun. And that's basically all sunflower means. And I think it was, at the time, this was probably a couple of 100 years ago at this stage, but the rumor goes that an Italian fella said to an English fella, girasol. Oh, what's that? The Jerusalem artichokes, the actual tubers. What are that? What are they? Oh, girasol. Oh, Jerusalem artichoke is what he thought, because they taste a bit like artichoke. And no, they definitely don't come from Jerusalem. So let me just take a look here. So Harold, if you want to tell me what zone you're in for climate, then I might be able to tell you whether those might go to seed. But I know ginger in Ireland anyway, you can grow ginger if you have a greenhouse inside of a greenhouse to keep it extra warm, just to extend the season. And let me just see here. Okay, Pacific Northwest. Jez, I assume that you have, so that's like zone, what's that, like zone 5 or 6 or something like that, is it? I assume, no, that's going to be too short a season to get those Jerusalem artichokes to go to flower and actually ripen the seeds, if you're looking for seeds from those. Normally, you would, that's what we do anyway. Not most people would actually just propagate Jerusalem artichoke the same way as the potatoes, and you would simply just do a vegetative propagation where you simply take the roots, or you take the tubers and plant them again, or spread them and plant them in other spots in your garden, and that will that's the best way to do it, because then you stay true to that variety. So you'll be able to, you'd get the same variety as your original plant was. So if you're growing from seed, of course, that will actually help to evolve the plant a little bit and make it a bit more steady in your climate, if you can get it to go to seed, and if you keep picking the best ones out of that for generations and generations. And sometimes it's funny what you get out of it when you take seeds. Like we tried yacon seeds before, but we haven't grown those yet. Just didn't get a chance. Last year was just been so busy, especially with the transition from going from a job and a business. It was both a full-time job and a full-time business into a full-time business. So I'm just only doing the business now, and I'll have more time for that type of experiments. So guys, let me know if you have any other questions at all about homesteading. Oh, hang on a second now. Sorry, now I forgot to turn off that banner. I was meant to just check here on a couple of other sources for the comments to see if I have any other questions. So let me just have a look here. So Michael is asking, what am I doing at the moment? Like, what's the priority in the gardens at the moment? So that's a really good question, and thank you for that. I will happily answer it. So at the moment, I'm trying to just, I have been working off the orders that come in from the winter selection. That's usually the cuttings and bare root stuff and the tubers. So as that is finishing, because the growing season is commencing in earnest, and I am basically just starting new plants from seed and from cuttings. And I'm potting up some rooted cuttings as well that are already from last year, and some um, rhizomes and some crown divisions. So that means just a part of a plant that will grow very quickly, like comfrey, for example. And I'm going to be just tidying up the gardens a little bit, because some of the weeds from last year, especially the perennial ones like nettles, are starting to grow again. So I better take care of those. And I'm just going to be kind of trying to keep a balance between, at least within the business, I'm trying to keep a balance between marketing, sales, and production. First, I got to have production, got to produce something of value before you can turn it into living, or before you can turn into financial capital. And so producing an abundance of living capital is what it's all about. And that's what we're trying to teach with Gardens for Life, and with the Birdland Homestead as well. We're trying to help people connect their gardens with their daily lives through homesteading, and build resilience and build a bit of self-reliance as well. So it's not only about food security at all. It's actually more about it's more about actually producing something that it just tastes much better, things that you produce yourself, and it's just fresher as well. And we like to produce lots of kale as well and feed that to our chickens, and they love it. And it's more of a species appropriate diet for them as well. We also give them grain as well, but they definitely produce some really good eggs as well. And we use the chickens, actually. I made a couple of videos about this, just kind of chicken tractoring them around the place in the back garden, just to get rid of some of the weeds that were actually kind of invading the edge of our garden, of our no-dig garden beds. And they definitely did a great job, and they saved me an awful lot of work in the process. So if you have any questions, let me know. Please don't be shy. Whatever platform you're watching this on, let me know if you have any questions about homesteading or home brewing or gardening, no-dig, lasagna gardening too. I can talk about that. I can also talk about forest gardening as well. So that's kind of what all of our gardens are kind of transitioning into. So anytime I start off, I always start off with a no-dig garden. All that means is you're smothering the existing vegetation with various different methods. For example, you can use cardboard and then just dump your compost on top. Or you can use plastic, but you have to do it at least 2 months in advance. Maybe even longer if it's in the winter. Probably more like 6 months. And the other way would be, of course, poultry. You can run chickens and eat the weeds and scratch them up. And then you can dump your compost on top once they've smothered them enough. And you then can add so that's a no-dig grow space you have then. And we don't do raised beds at all here on our homestead or in our gardens. I think raised beds are all well and good, especially if you can bend down. But as long as they're tall enough, that's fine. But it's just a lot of work to have to maintain the compost in the raised beds. I prefer just spreading compost in an entire area and then actually doing your paths in between. So wherever you want to, and you can just walk them in and put a sprinkler of wood chips. And that usually does a really good job for about one growing season. It keeps your feet clean and dry. So yeah, there's a lot going on. We need to get ready before June. I'm trying to get a lot of things done now, try and get lots of plants started, both from cuttings and seed, but also trying to get ready to expand the garden as well. And I need to get that done before June. Hopefully we'll get a couple of dry weeks, or at least one dry week. And anyone living in Ireland right now, well, at least from the Midlands over to the west side, or the west coast, you will find that it's been very wet in the last week or so. I know at the Botanical Gardens, which is the default on the RTE or the ME, the Met Éireann weather forecast website. That's actually, I think, the botanical gardens would be in southern south of Dublin, and there's very nice weather and very warm and almost no rain at all. They're very lucky over there compared to us here in Roscommon. We definitely get a lot of rain here, but it's more than average this month now. Somebody told me that it's supposed to be the wettest month for a long time, for years. Yet. So April is supposed to be. We definitely could do with drier month instead. But we do have our water tanks filled up. So we have about 3 water tanks here for the one greenhouse and 4 or 5 for the other. And we're just gathering up a bit of rainwater just in case there is a drought. And we usually do get them here. And you wouldn't believe how much water it takes to water just the seedlings, seed trays on the tables in the greenhouse. So I have 7 tables that are made of like a double-sized pallet. And each of those tables would use at least one watering can per day. I water it in the evening time. That's maybe favorable to the slug, because the slugs will come out at night and then they can come in easier because you're watering, and some of that water will end up on the ground unless you've got trays under all of your seed trays in your greenhouse. So I just beg your pardon. And you need to probably best off to water your plants in the evening time, especially in the greenhouse, because otherwise most of that water will just evaporate during the daytime. And it takes 7 watering cans, so that's 10. I think it's like 15 liters or something like that. So that's 100 liters a day. So an IBC tank is 1,000 liters. So that means you've only got 10 days worth of water if you have a full IBC tank. So you may need more than one if the drought continues. And last year and the year before, especially last year in June, we had a major drought. But the year before that, we had one in May. I think it was 2 weeks. Then again in June, and then again. So in between droughts, there wasn't enough rain actually to fill the water tanks at all. So we were getting stuck for water a little bit. And we're not going to use tap water to water our plants, because that'll just kill the soil life, and it might not even do very well for the plants themselves as well. So let me just take a look here to see. So for those of you who just joined, have you got any questions at the moment? You can ask me anything to do with homesteading, gardening, growing food, preserving food, home brewing. Did I mention that already? I don't remember. So there is a lot of stuff going on at the moment, and we're doing our best to keep up with it all. Definitely a balance between maintenance, like as in making sure the gardens are kept relatively tidy, and some of that will be the stalks from last year. We leave those in place for the insects to overwinter, and also it'll help to insulate the garden beds a little bit. But then we gather those up usually in spring and then make insect piles. So hopefully those will help the insects stay over winter next winter, which is only in 7 or 8 months. Of course, I don't want to think about that. I want to think about the summer. Looking forward to the summer and actually wearing a t-shirt outdoors. And hopefully it won't be a washout of a summer. Is that how you say it? In Ireland, you can get lucky sometimes and you get like a week of no rain at all for the summer. I know some of you guys, especially living in the US and parts of the US, it's a real problem if it doesn't rain for like 6 months or a year or even longer. That's a real problem. Like, that actually begs the question whether it's actually sustainable to live in that area anymore. Definitely, I would prefer this climate, having too much rain, not like all in one go, like a rainy season and then everything floods. But I would prefer to have, like, just in general, just a bit of rain every once in a while. Of course, once a week would be plentiful. In Ireland, we get it once every 2 days usually, or maybe for a whole week or two. and it could be drizzling for a while. So let me just have a look here. Is there any of you guys over there on Twitter? How is that working? Is that working okay? I'm just checking. So any of you guys, where are you all from? Like what country or what part of the world? Let me know in the comments. And so another common question that I get asked a lot is, how do you get ready for the season to actually do your wines, your country wines? Because we do have a couple of courses actually coming up, and there's actually places booked already for those. There is a couple of places left still, and we are starting the season with rhubarb. So rhubarb is one of those kind of main what's that called, a staple ingredient for making country wines, because it's actually really good. It does add flavor, it lends flavor to the wine, but also it actually gives the wine a certain consistency. I think it's to do maybe with is there tannins in it or something like that, but I don't know. But all I know is I tried it, and one time I had, say for example, elderberries or sloes, and I didn't have enough of them to make like a full bucket, but I didn't want to make say a 5-gallon bucket. I didn't want to make demijohns, like 1-gallon demijohns. I didn't want to make three of those, so I just added some rhubarb, and that helped to bulk out the berries. And it also can be used with flowers as well, like elderflowers and rhubarb go really well together. We do have some recipes on our website, and I might actually show those to you in a minute. Definitely elderflower is one of our favorites, but it's quite difficult to get just right in flavor. Sometimes it can be quite off-putting to some people because it has the resemblance, the smell and the flavor, mostly the smell resembles cat pee to some people, even though that may not be what it smells like at all. But the American elder is even better. It actually has a vanilla scent, so you can harvest that from midsummer, so about the 21st of June, all the way through to the end of the season, like in August, and all the way until October. We've been harvesting it, and I just want to show you this here. I'm going to share my screen, so you can see here. We have, if you type wine into our website in the search, you can click search up here and then type in wine. You get a video how to make it. Actually, we used some rhubarb and lemon zest and American elder flowers, and we made that wine. I think it was later in the season anyway. So Glaskin's Perpetual is the only variety of rhubarb you're supposed to be harvesting after midsummer, because the other varieties all naturally become poisonous when the oxalic acid actually travels back down the stalk when the plant is taking the energy back from the leaf and to overwinter. And so Glaskin's Perpetual, it's very important not to harvest rhubarb after midsummer unless it's that variety. So we do have that variety because it's quite good, and also it extends the harvest, so we don't have to even bother actually preserving it. We used to preserve the rhubarb and all sorts of different things, like even in jellies or that kind of thing, and it's not really worth it. You don't have to do it. So let me just take a look here real quick. Hang on. So I just wanted to show you here. So there's a few recipes here too on the website, and I just want to show you them real quick. For those of you interested in making wine, of course, sloe berries and elderberries are only available in the autumn, but it's important to remember that the website, the recipes are all for free, available for free on the website, and you can look them up anytime. But it's quite a process. So you can freeze the berries. Those are sloe berries. They're really astringent when you eat them, and it's like the most sour thing you've ever tasted. They're like tiny plums, but extremely sour. I guess there's a lot of vitamin C in them. And so you can make a wine that's actually probably relatively healthy. I'm not sure if any of that vitamin C stays in the wine in the end, because you're to freeze the berries. So those are frozen now. And then you can pour some hot water over them. And you add sugar and you mash them and you filter it. You can add the sugar afterwards too. And you add hot water to them. Then you add more cold water and then yeast. So then you leave the yeast for 10 minutes. And then you put it somewhere warm, like in a living room beside a stove, maybe not too near it. But then after a while, you get after maybe a day or after, this is 3 days later now, the pulp actually rises to the top, and you can actually just scoop it off the top and then filter the whole lot into another bucket. And that's basically all there is to it. You can get the most out of it with a muslin cloth, and then you get the wine, and then you ferment it for 4 weeks. 4 weeks is what it takes to make wine. And then you end up with a wine. So I made this actually, I think this was only a couple of years ago I put this article up. And the wine I made, that was actually 12 years previous. So this bottle of wine at the time was 12 years old. I still have it now though. Sloe and elderberry wine, but you can see how, yeah, no, it's not really a good idea to keep wine for that long. But anyway, there's also elderflower recipes and cordials as well. So yeah, no, take a look at the website. It's all available for free. So let me just come back in here. And I'll just check to see if there's any other questions here. So, hello, Vanessa. How are you doing? Thanks for joining us. Thanks for asking a question. So, have you ever made any sweet wine? So all the wines I make, so here's conventionally the way you make a sweet wine, including port or that type of thing, like regular wines, like grape wines in the shops. You can make grape wines at home as well, either using actual grapes that you grow yourself or buy, but you can also make them from a kit. So if you want your wine to be sweet, you gotta kill the yeast before it eats all the alcohol, and you gotta get it just right. So you have to measure it using a hydrometer, and you can actually check how much sugar there is left in it. And then you add sulfite. I don't do that because I don't want to drink sulfite because it's a preservative. But the sulfite will kill the yeast. And then you're left with whatever amount of sugar remains in your wine in the end. So you can also do it in a different way. You can back sweeten it. Some people use chemical sweeteners. I don't use those at all. I wouldn't do that. But what you can do instead is you can figure out what the tolerance of the yeast is. So what that means is just to see how much it actually uses. So how much alcohol can the yeast actually withstand? And then you just add a little extra sugar. So you measure your sugar content at the beginning when you're making your wine using a hydrometer. Again, all the hydrometer does is it measures how much sugar is in the wine or in the water. And from that, because sugar is denser than water, so it floats a bit more. And then you can then, from that, you can predict how much the yeast is going to eat up. And you can just end up with a sweet wine. But we don't do that much anymore because everyone likes a different amount of sweetness in their wines. So what we do is, a lot of people like dry wines because they just don't want to eat or drink too much sugar. Never mind aspartame and ASK and all that. So what we do is, I just add the right amount of sugar. I put in the yeast. I make sure that the yeast can go beyond whatever percentage of sugar I add. Usually I go to about 12%. You don't have to go any higher. Maybe even 10% is fine. But just remember that it's just as much hassle to bottle. So it's probably better value for money, or at least better value for your time, if you're going to be bottling 12% or 13% wine. But just, I wouldn't bother going beyond that because that'll take away from the flavor. I think if you have an alcoholic note in your wine, it's not really a good thing. And I think you're better off to actually go with a lower amount of alcohol, let's say 12, for example, and you can simply let the yeast die off naturally. After 4 weeks, it'll just be gone because there's no more food there for it, no more sugar. And you can, which is in itself a little bit cruel anyway, using a bacteria culture to for our food needs. Even for breads, of course, same thing really, but slightly different strain of yeast. So then what we do is we bottle the wine dry, and then we simply add sugar afterwards at the table. So you can just get a little glass, pour a little bit of hot water in it with a couple of teaspoons of sugar, mix it through, let it cool down, and you can add a little bit at a time to your glass of wine. And that'll take the dryness out of it, and it definitely helps to reduce the pH, so it makes it less acidic when you're adding the sugar, especially in the end. Like a dry wine can be quite harsh as well, so you add a bit of sugar and then you get more fruitiness as well. So the sugar and corrects the pH a little bit, so it makes it less acidic, and with that you get more flavor. So at least the flavor becomes more available to your palate. So let me know if you have any questions about homesteading or food, growing food, preserving food. Wherever you're watching this, this is actually going live on Gardens for Life and Bird on Homestead, both the YouTube channels, and the Facebook as well. Unfortunately, on the Facebook page, we're not getting much traction at all anymore. That may be because most people have left Facebook, or maybe for other reasons. So we have a question here. Have I ever grown taro for a root crop? Thank you, Chris, for the question. So taro, isn't that the elephant's ear? I think that's what it's called. I would be careful with that if that's what it is, because you can look it up on faf.org. I'm just going to type that in here. So you can, I'll give you a link here. pfaf.org is a very good website to look up all kinds of different plants, especially to see whether or not those are edible or if there's any risks in the plants themselves. And so it's Plants for a Future. And I like to look up common names, and then you get the Latin names as well. Or you can type in the Latin names and you get all those permaculture plants there. That's actually probably how the website started in of itself. And that's how I found it as well. All these permaculture plants that I just couldn't find any information about anywhere. So I kept coming across Plants for a Future. And yeah, it's a good website. So it's definitely one. I might actually even buy one of their books because it's fierce handy. But sure, how could you make a book about all the plants? Sure, you wouldn't be able to. Maybe they split them. I think they do have several books, and they split them into maybe edible plants or perennials or whatever way. So let's see where people are based. I was also earlier on, I asked where people are based, so we can see here. So I see here, Margaret is based in Eastern Ontario in Canada, or Canada, as I prefer to call it. Loughrea. Very good, Pauline. Let me see here. So we're based in the Midlands of Ireland, or just off the Midlands, in Roscommon, near Roscommon town, for those of you who don't know. So I see here Harold is Pacific Northwest. So a few people from across the pond joining us here on the all live streams. I do appreciate you guys joining. So yeah, we'll just see if there's any more questions, and we might leave it at that for today. I was actually coming in, starting the live stream at 9:15 today instead of 9 o'clock, because I was potting up plants at the big garden up the road, and I didn't realize what time it was, and it was kind of getting dark, and because it's actually quite cloudy out there, and it's actually drizzling as well, so I didn't even realize. Jesus, it's already time to go home and go live on YouTube. So I was potting up some perennial borage today, actually, and our crown divisions of the comfrey are doing really well. They're growing really fast in pots. We have the pots mostly in the greenhouse now at the moment, with both doors open all the time. Actually, there is no doors built into that greenhouse yet, just to get those plants, give those plants a little bit of an extra boost because it's a bit cold out there yet. So things are growing in the gardens, all right, but they still do need a little bit of a boost in terms of heat, because especially at night time it can get still quite cold, and although it is very dry, I found that even growing plants from cuttings, sometimes they just do better when you leave them outside, even if it isn't warm enough for them yet to grow. But at the same time, um, we'll try both anyway. We found that plants actually prefer to just grow outside, but then you have to have somewhere to put them so that they don't get eaten by the slugs. Although if they're healthy, they won't have any trouble. But you know how it is with a potted plant or a plant in a container. It is an artificial environment, like I said earlier, and sometimes that means that the plant can get under stress very easily, because you wouldn't be out there looking after it every 2 hours. So it could dry out, and it could actually, other things can happen to it that cause stress to the plant. And then, of course, that sends out a signal to the slugs to come here and eat me. So let me see if there's any other questions here. Chris is asking, what about sweet potatoes in Ireland? Yeah, indoors in a greenhouse. But for that, I probably don't really have the space, to be honest. I do follow a lot of lads in Florida. So in Central Florida, there's Green Dreams, and there's Pete, and he has a friend that also grows a lot of sweet potatoes. He even grows peanuts indoors in the greenhouse, and all kinds of different other plants that we can't grow here for sure, unless we have a Wallapini, which is a 12-month warm greenhouse. So sweet potatoes, we haven't grown them personally yet, but I know you'd want to grow them indoors because they just need the heat. I think they benefit from the dryness as well. The good news is, once you have them, if you have space indoors, if you have enough indoor space, they'll do quite well. But they take up a lot of space. It's kind of like pumpkins. I wouldn't grow pumpkins indoors. I just grow a different variety and grow them outdoors, like oshiki kuri, for example. Same as the sweet potato. We love sweet potatoes, but I just haven't bothered trying them yet. I just have too many other things that are easier to grow on the go first. So I see another question here from Mary. So I have a harvesting seed question. When's the best time to harvest seeds for kale? Mine are starting to flower. Midsummer, I'd say. So when the seed pods have ripened and when they have gone dry. When the majority of them have gone completely dry, and when some of them have started actually opening up. So what you can do is, you can do two things. You can put a plastic bag over the whole plant, and then just flatten it and close the plastic bag, and then just shake it around, and then you get all the seeds. Okay. Then you carefully take the plastic bag off your plant, and then the rest of the seed pods can still continue ripening. Or you can just cut the whole plant if they're mostly dry. Cut the whole plant, put it into a black bag, and just shake it around, like roll it around with your fingers, and then you're going to have so much kale seeds, you're not going to know what to do with them. So our red Russian kale has been self-seeding for 5 seasons in a row. So this will be, it's just the 5th season now, and we haven't had to replant it. But it is a bit messy letting your kale go to seed, because our gardens are a bit of a evolving ecosystem anyway. So we like things going to seed and self-seeding in the garden. That's why we don't cover all of our garden beds in wood chips, because we don't want to turn the whole garden into lasagna, although it would help with the weeds. But then plants can't self-seed as easily. There is one massive downside, Mary, to self-seeding your kale. Now, collecting the seeds just to start them again next year, that's one thing. But if you want those seeds to fall on the ground, and for those seeds to make new plants in the coming season, they usually don't grow big enough. They just grow, they have a late start in the season. So by the time the seeds drop, it'll be midsummer, and then it'll not have enough time to actually mature to get to full size so that you have kale for next winter. You will have lots of little kale plants in the winter, but you really need to start fresh kale plants if you want production of leaves. You got to start those earlier in the season than midsummer, of course, say March or April. But it's never too late, really. I mean, even June or July. I planted up the whole garden back there in July, and it was extremely productive even in the first year. So I planted mostly perennials, but I also planted some annuals in between just to bridge the gap, just to make use of the space. So until the perennials actually mature, so to speak. And I know Mark Shepard uses something called Silvio pasture, and he also does alley cropping or tree cropping. So he has rows of trees. This is, of course, farm scale. This is 130 acres, but every 20 meters he has a row of trees, like say fruit trees or apple trees, and then he uses the space in between. And I think you can scale that down to homestead size or home garden size anyway, and you can just grow a few perennials in among your annual garden beds, and they'll get bigger, and you'll have less and less space for annuals if you keep growing your perennials. But at the same time, our gardens usually turn into perennial gardens in the end anyway after a couple of years. So especially when the perennials go to seed and then self-seed, like our fennels are doing really well. We have some fennel plants that are 5 years old, actually 6 years old now, and they're massive. It's like one bulb is like that size. So you imagine a fennel bulb that size. And this is not bulbing fennel now. This is actually leaf fennel, but the bulb is underground. It's kind of like a parsnip. So does anyone else have any questions? Or we might just leave it at that in a few minutes. Do you have any questions that you'd like to ask me? Even business related if you want to. How to start a business, or I can probably answer questions about production, marketing, and sales, and all of that, or internet marketing. I can probably answer some of those too. You're very welcome. And yeah, of course, you can also ask me anything to do with gardening. That's probably the main topic, but at the same time, the garden is the engine room of the homestead. So kind of like the kitchen is the engine room in a restaurant or even in a hotel. So that's where most of the productivity comes from, and that's where your probably per square meter your most productive ground is on the homestead. Except if you had like a secondary accommodation, like a cabin or a glamping or something like that for Airbnb or that type of thing, that may be a little bit more productive. But if you can grow your own food, I mean, even some of the vegetables, like even the greens, salad greens are actually basically the most expensive thing by the pound or by the kilo in the supermarket. It's even more expensive. So salad greens are actually more expensive by weight than steak. Would you believe it or not? It's true. It's true. So if you can grow your own salad greens, you will definitely save some money, and especially you'll find that because of the freshness, the quality is just much better. But it's not only the freshness, of course. You wouldn't have been spraying your food with poison, especially not artificial poisons. We don't even spray natural poisons. People always ask us, so are you organic? Like, are we growing organically? And I say, we don't even use the poisons that organic growers are allowed to use. Not that there's anything wrong with that. You can use whatever you like in your garden. I wouldn't recommend using like chemical fertilizers or any kind of pesticides or anything like that, or herbicides. Certainly not. I'm not advocating for that, because we do always like to promote people actually working with nature, and actually hopefully working in some kind of a balanced relationship with nature, or a symbiosis, so that you get a harvest and the wildlife also gets a harvest too. And it's not just the insects that are important, it's also the birds and the smaller mammals, even the hedgehogs. We do try to encourage all of the wildlife in our gardens. So yeah, so we've been going for 50 minutes now. 50 minutes. So let me see here. So Chris here is saying I use excess kale seeds to grow microgreens. That's a good idea. At one time I completely overseeded my one of the crates actually. I just kind of planted way too many seeds like a red Russian kale, and we ended up with lots of little tiny kale plants, and they were just kind of useless. You couldn't really have been planting them elsewhere. Like they were just too densely packed into the crate. And actually, you could have used them as microgreens. They are quite tender, especially the younger leaves. We find that red Russian kale seems to be the least bitter one out of the whole lot of them. We do grow a number of other kale varieties as well. We have Portuguese kale, Taunton Dean, Daubenton, and loads of other ones, Sutherland. But I think the Taunton Dean is my favorite, simply because it looks good. It has like it's purple and deep green, and it tastes just as good as any other. And it's perennial, so you can grow it from cuttings, and it doesn't go to seed. So no, that means you won't get seeds off it, but you can grow fairly reliably. You can grow it from cuttings. So you just basically take a cutting and stick it in the ground. I do have a YouTube video on that. And so just look up how to grow kale from cuttings, or free kale for life, I called the video, I think. And which is true, because you'll never be dependent on buying seeds, and you'll never be threatened by Monsanto. So if you have plants that will indefinitely grow from cuttings, because you can always start new ones, and you can even give your friends a few cuttings too, and then you have a backup in case your plants don't do too well one year. You can get them again, and you can share your productivity and the abundance, and that's what it's all about. So talking of which, we have a Homesteader, the next seed and plant swap actually has been announced, and I'm going to be fleshing out the website on that in the next coming days. So it's on the 12th of May. For those of you who are not too far from us, on the 12th of May, we have a Homesteaders of Ireland swap meet. So you can bring seeds and plants and, for example, sourdough starts. We got a sourdough start. We got a kombucha start. We got a kefir start the last time, and lots of things like people brought in things that they crafted themselves. And it doesn't have to be food, by the way, or seeds or plants. It can be anything. So I do encourage you to take a look at our websites. I'll just give you a link here in the comments. We also have a number of workshops coming up as well. And for those of you who just joined, we are finishing up because we've been live for 52 minutes, and my voice can only go so far. It's kind of hard to keep talking nonstop. If you have another person in the live stream, it helps a lot, because then sometimes you can actually be resting your voice. So yeah, just keep an eye on our events page. I just posted it in the comments. So it's gardensforlife.ie/events, and we have lots of workshops, in-person workshops. Of course, for those of you working or living in Canada or in the US, that's too far away. We do have an online no-dig course though, which is going to be finished up soon, and you can avail of that if you like. We'll also be working on a number of other online courses as well in the coming months. And please do give us a thumbs up on this video. Maybe it'll help to get more people the next time. We are live every Thursday, 9 p.m. GMT, so Greenwich Mean Time or Dublin time. And the reason why I say that is because we have people from all over the world joining, and it's important to know what time zone you're in when you state what time it is. And so we will see you the next time. We'll see you next Thursday. And thank you for joining. See you the next time.